Waynos, despite the very fine effort by Dan and the others to manage that particular operation. Wayno, dealing with Wayno, you met his friendliness, his exuberance, his sense of humor. It actually was fun to go shopping at Wayno and interact with Wayno. And a final point, if I could appoint an economic czar to revive business in downtown Antrim, Wayno would be my choice. So, Wayno, welcome.
I don't think I'll need a microphone. I think everybody's going to be able to hear me. They always have. I can't believe that all you people didn't have something else to do on Sunday afternoon. This is really wonderful, and I certainly appreciate it. I'm not much of a public speaker, and so hopefully I'll get through all of this afternoon. One other time I had the opportunity to speak in this church, and it was when I graduated from high school, which this is what I looked like when I graduated from high school a few years ago. And I was the vice president of my class, and they wanted me to do the welcome. So I got up on the podium, stood there, and I said, "Welcome." That's all I remember. So this was an honor for them to ask me, and I kept saying no, no, no. And Bill Nichols kept after me, and so finally I said, "Okay, I'll do it. Get you guys off of my back." I've really enjoyed Antrim my whole life, and I want to start off with a picture first, please.
Maybe.
I think.
What is this, Channel 9?
Yeah.
TDS?
Well, TDS hasn't been doing too well lately. We missed the football game 2 weeks ago completely because they were off. So,
John, could you hit the third switch to your right?
This one?
All the way. Nope, sorry, it's the other one.
Oh, we've got something.
The other left.
There we go.
gotta catch myself. Carter passed away last week. We were pretty much like brothers. You're going to hear a lot about him today because even before he died, this is what I was going to say when I came here. And if he was well and with us, I'd be saying the same thing that I'm going to say now. So, God bless him. Going to start at the beginning. Ezra was born in West Erin in 1935. I was only there for 2 weeks, and the man that owned the set of buildings, his name was Mr. Worth, and he asked my parents to please move. And I had to get out right away. In those days, you did what you wanted to do without any baloney, so my parents got out and they moved to Antrim. I always told my kids that I was born in West Erin, there was a barn there, and I was born in a manger. think I had them, you know, until they got to be 1 or 2 years old, and then after that, they didn't believe me. Anyway, after 2 weeks, we had moved to Antrim, and we lived up in Fred Roberts' house, and probably some of you people know where that is. And we lived there for a very short time, and the third week we were gone, the man burned his house down for $3,000 worth of insurance, is what my mother told me. Because I was only 3 weeks old, so I got to go on what my mom said. So it was gone. And so then we moved on. We were only up there a short time. We moved on onto Depot Street, halfway down the hill on the left-hand side, just one house below where Dickie Edmonds lives now. These are some pictures that go back. This is down on Depot Street. This is on Depot Street. Younger, older. Then we moved from Depot Street. I don't really remember living with my father. He was only around a short time. He didn't die. My mom and dad did not get along, so he moved to Hillsborough. And my brother and I, Leland, L-E-L-O-N, Leland and I lived with my mom. And so we lived on Depot Street until 1945. My mother and father got divorced in 44. And in the divorce court, the judge said, okay, Augie, his name was August, you got to give your wife, Flossie, $6 a week for each child. So that was $12. Well, he never did. My mother worked in Goodall Company. I can't tell you when she retired, but it was in the 80s sometime. This is my mom and my brother Leland. And that was about 47 or 48. We lived in Clinton. We lived on Old Hancock Road in Clinton. As you make the corner, right where the fork is to go to Greg Lake, it was the second house down, just over the bridge where the brook is there. And there was a little camp about the size of this, I'd say. And so we lived there for 2 years. And in 1949, my mother got an apartment. This is Proctor's store right here, which burned 2 or 3, 4 years ago. Time goes so fast I can't remember. And we lived upstairs over Proctor's store. My brother is 17 there. He was in the service 16 weeks, and he was killed in Korea at 17 on February 14th, 1951. After that, my mother had a house built up on Pleasant and High Street, which is still there. My sister owns it now. And from 51 until, I guess, 57, when I got married, I lived up there. Flip a picture, please. Oh, I don't remember that one. That goes back a ways. I may go back and forth here. I'm not quite sure, but we were a heck of a lot younger there. That was my family back years and years and years ago. That was before I was born. My brother, my mother, my father and mother never liked each other, so they were never together in the picture. It's over there. But that's how they dressed back in the 30s. Okay. Okay, 30s. These are some pictures of what Rick and Diane's look like down through the years. I'd say this is the oldest one. It used to be a grain store with hay and whatnot for horses, and the telephone building was still there at that time, or still is now. And then it went on to here, and it went on to here. I'm not sure what these years are here, but this was just before I purchased Butcher's store. I got married in '57, and I was working for Roy Baker, and so was Carter. In '56, I bought a brand new Chevrolet. That was before I purchased the building, so I'll step back to '56. I bought a brand new Chevrolet, and Carter and I were working for Roy Baker doing restoration work. And we worked all over New England, and one of the places that was the most fun was the Longfellows Wayside Inn down in South Sudbury, Mass. That building burned. It was a huge building, and it burned Christmas Eve 1955. And between 55 and 57, I wasn't married yet until 57, I was going back and forth to Florida, and I had bought this brand new Chevrolet, and we worked for Roy Baker at the Longfellows Wayside Inn. And so, you know how young guys are chasing young women. Betsy was in Miami, and I was in Antrim. So Carter and I, we worked 4.5 days a week. We worked 10.5-hour days, and on Friday morning, we'd get out of work at 11 o'clock. So Carter and I were all set, and we'd jump into my car, and we'd head for Miami. Spent a day and a half down there, and we was back to work on Monday morning at 6:30.
What kind of car was it?
It was a 56 Chevy, 2-door Bel Air sports coupe with overdrive and big motor.
And a heavy foot.
It would go. Luckily, that was before 95. Now, there was no Route 95 up and down the coast. You had the 301 and you had to go in and out. Like, I can remember Richmond, Virginia. That was murder getting through Richmond. But we usually hit it at nighttime. We had it pretty well planned. And we never stopped, only for gas. One of us would pump gas, and the other one would run into the store and buy something to eat and jump right back into the car, and off we'd go heading for Florida again. Then we did the same thing on the way home. We did that 5 weekends in a row until I finally talked Betsy into getting married. And so she worked for Eastern Airlines, and so I had to get her an engagement ring, but I didn't have any money. Carter had just gotten out of the service a little while before that, and he still had some money that the service gives you when you get out. And so he loaned me $300 to buy my wife's engagement ring. I paid him back. So anyway, we came back up, got married, and worked for Baker. Carter did also. And we, in 1958, my oldest son, Todd, was born. He was 8 months old, and Betsy really wanted to go to Florida to live, and so I let my job go. We went down to Florida, and I picked up with Wholesome Bread, got a job, said I've got to go back to New Hampshire and clean up the furniture and all that type of thing. I'll be back in 2 weeks. Well, I never went back because my Uncle Morris Tucker talked me into buying this building here. It looked pretty much like that at the time, except the First National store wasn't there then. It was up the street. And so I came back. I'm gonna drop off now to the First National when it was here. First National came into Antrim in 1933, and they left that building there and moved up where Antrim Marketplace is now in 1948. But my first venture in business was this piece of equipment right here. And this was the refrigeration on Main Street back in those days. And I was like 7, 8 years old. My mother worked in the grinding room down in Goodall Company. And I'd go down there at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and get an order from all the people that worked in the grinding room, probably 15, 20 people, and they'd order soda. Well, the soda was in here, and this was full of ice, and it sat out in front of First National right here. And so I'd come up and I'd take all the soda out. I had a list, and take the soda out, and it was 16-ounce bottles in those days, and they cost a nickel. But you had to pay 2 cents deposit on the bottle. So it was 7 cents altogether, but when you brought the bottle back, you got 2 cents back, and that was my pay for getting the soda for the people down in Goodall Company in the summertime only. And I did that for about 4 or 5 years. And so every time I took, every day when I went back, I made the 2 cents, 2 cents, 2 cents, and 2 cents. So I guess that was my first real job. As far as,
Well, it's probably still while you're trying to put your government 2 cents in.
So anyway, that's why I brought this piece. When I bought Butcher's Block, this was way in the back room, and I've kept it ever since. I've had it in the house and whatnot. It's in pretty good shape. First National used to have over 700 stores in the New England states, and they went out of business, started going out of business in 66, 67, 68, and pretty soon they were all gone. I have no clue why they went out of business, because they were a pretty large outfit. Now, when I first went into business back in 1959, there wasn't any Shaws, there wasn't any market baskets, there was nothing. I think A&P had a store in Peterborough, and that was about the best thing to do. But Peterborough was a long way off when you were back in '59. I live in East Antrim, and I never went to East Antrim. It was too far to go. So I got a water right there. Thank you.
Yeah, well, now you know.
Is that gin?
No, I asked, they were like, no, don't even.
Thank you. Thank you. So
Not 4:30 yet.
I know.
Yeah, nobody
Who
cares.
said that? So anyway, I was lucky. There weren't any supermarkets, and I had the largest store. Well, actually, I didn't have the largest store. I just had the front of where Rick and Diane's is now. And so Carter and I built onto the back of it. We put 45 feet onto the back, which he doesn't use now, but I guess he's got an apartment back in there. But there's over twice the space of what Rick is using for a pizza place. So I built on there in about 1970. Gotta stop and think. Moved up. 67. About 1962, we built on to enlarge, and then I put in a meat department. Bill Hague had a meat department in the town hall in the far end, on the north end, where the police department just moved out of. And a couple of gentlemen in Antrim, which were high mucky muck guys, walked in and said, "You'll never make it. Wayno, Bill Hague's got best meats going around." So anyway, I put in a 6-foot case, and I didn't know anything about it, but I had a good friend in Dave Jaffries, who lived up on Summer Street. He was a meat cutter. He went to work for me, and he cut meat, and I didn't pay much attention because I had other things to do. And I can remember one day at noontime I sold all the hamburger, and he was still on his hour's lunch break, and I ran out of hamburger. And I didn't know how to grind hamburger. So I asked the customer to please wait. Dave would be back in a few minutes. So he did, and as I remember it, and she got her hamburger. But anyway, Dave got a job with Grand Union over to Peterborough. And they paid him $1 an hour more than I could pay him. But he said, I'll come over at night after work and I'll show you how to cut, I'll fill your meat case for you and for the next day, and I'll show you how to cut meat. And so he showed me how to cut meat, and I cut meat for 38 years. I had a couple other good meat cutters. Stand up, Bob. Stand up. Bob Hoppin. He was with me for a long time. We had some great times. We all like to party. I've slowed down a little bit. I don't know about Bob. Flip that over. Where are we going from there? Oh, this goes back a few years to J.M. Cutter. This is another story in myself being on Main Street of Antrim. That's how they used to deliver meat house to house back in the 20s and 30s. He had ice in there just like we had ice in here. And the ice came from Pierce Lake. During the wintertime they'd go up and they'd cut large chunks of ice out of Pierce Lake. And where I live now, my 3-car garage right next to my house used to be an ice house. And when I bought my place back in '72, the roof was all caved in, and so I cleaned that all up, and then went with a bucket loader, and it was full of sawdust, because in the wintertime, when they were cutting the ice, they had to keep it for all summer, and so they'd put the ice in there, and they'd put a layer of sawdust over each ice to keep it, and they'd keep it all summer. And that's where the ice came from that did this. For the First National. First National back in those days did not, they had no refrigeration in the store. I think the only refrigeration in the town back in those days was Morris Cutter had a meat market back in the 30s and 40s, and he had a 6-foot case, and that was about all the refrigeration there was. First National in Antrim never had one. When I purchased my store from Butcher, that's Walter Butcher in the background, that's what it looked like. Patent medicines, everything. What do we pick out of there, Bill? Tire tubes? Tire tubes. Down here, we sold tire tubes, postcards. Those are all patent medicines. Most of those would be illegal to sell today. Cigarettes, they were a big thing. I had a wicked cigarette business, which I wish I had never, but that's the way it goes. Here we are. We were talking about the date. Where'd you go, Steve?
1922,
Yeah.
well,
1918 is when he purchased it, okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. Walter Butcher was here for 41 years, but he didn't open in the summertime, in the wintertime. He'd go to Florida or Arizona and he'd come back with a trailer load of alligator bags and everything he could possibly purchase. And the place was just full of everything you can imagine.
And Dad, you still have one of those tables in the barn.
Yeah, I've still got one of these
Take it
left.
apart, but-
Yeah, those are marble tops. So, I wish I'd have kept them all, but I let the soda fountain go, which I wish I hadn't have. There's the backside of the soda fountain. This is Helen Butcher and Walter Butcher. They were the ones that were here these years. And these were all different flavors of syrup. And then this unit here, I have another one that's older than this one, but this was on the soda fountain, and you used to fill these with syrup, and then when you went to make your root beer, you would hit this a couple of times and put it in a glass, and then you go to salsa water, stir it up, put it on top of the counter, and that was it. And you cleaned this every night, you didn't refrigerate it, but this little unit here, I'm not bragging, but it's worth pretty close to $800 to $900, so. And I have two of them. And when I purchased Walt Butcher's store, with everything in it, it cost me $18,000 for the whole thing. Oh, I got a good, you just reminded me of a story, Bob. Good job. I think I broke the law.
Really?
I didn't have any money, and my Uncle Morris said, I'll give you $1,000 to get started. Well, that's all I had, was $1,000. And Herb Gordon and his wife were in the real estate business, and he helped me out. We went over to Peterborough to the Co-op Bank, which was beside Derby's, little building. And I borrowed $5,000 from them, which they loaned me. Well, I had $6,000, and I needed to get up to 18. So Herb and Alice and myself, I guess that's all I went down to Manchester to the Federal Loans Association and borrowed the rest of the money. So I borrowed from two banks to buy the same building. I don't think that was right?
Who came first?
So anyway, I had the $18,000 to purchase the building, which was great. And so I didn't like the idea of owing all that money. I never did my whole life. I never liked the idea of owing money. Paper mill was in business, well, they still are, but back in those days, there wasn't such a thing as a checking account. If there was, it was pretty far between. And paper mill used to pay in cash. And they'd put it in a little envelope and seal it and with your name on it and walk around and pay you. And if you made 85 bucks a week or 95 bucks a week, they'd give you tens. And then the they'd give you two twos and a one, two $2 bills and a $1 bill. And so I saved all of the $2 bills. And 2 years later, I went over to the Co-op Bank in Peterborough and gave them $5,000 worth of, well, probably not quite 5,000 because I was making monthly payments. But I gave them the balance in $2 bills, and they said, sat there counting that out. This Cutter's Market, and I brought this unit along. I like the antique, especially for advertisement pieces and whatnot. Well, going back to my store, these were some of the glasses that were used back when I had a soda fountain. And I have many, many more now, but those used to be advertisement pieces, and the companies would bring them in and give them to you, or they didn't cost hardly anything. And something like this one here today is made in 1905, I think it says on the bottom, made in Germany. They're worth pretty close to 200 bucks a piece, and in good shape. And so anyway, those were the types of glasses, Moxie and Hires, and I love both of those products. They're old. This shows right here, hard to reach the groceries on the top shelf. And this right here is one of these. And if you were tall enough, you use this one. And if you were really short, you use this one. And you reach up on the top shelf, clamp it, bring it down. And that's what this was for. Now, if you folks, especially you ladies, can imagine doing your grocery shopping in there, that's J.M. Cutter's Meat Market. And that's what it looked like back in the 40s, mid-40s. So, my store, I went into business on 10/10/59, and I have here 4 $1 bills. And my first customer that came in the day I opened, his name was Mr. Barradale. I never knew his last name. He was from New Jersey, and he was a banker. And I said, "You're my first customer." And so he reached out and he gave me $1. Came up, he stayed at the Maplehurst Inn every year for his vacation. Next year he came up, he came on the dates. He probably died, I have no clue what happened to him. But those were the 4 $1 bills that he gave me each time he came in. Then I had another man, while I'm on money, that's $2.35. Charlie Sias was the man's name. He lived up on Smith Road, and he was a coin collector. And he was broke, and he smoked Raleigh filters. And he needed a carton of cigarettes. And he brought those, yeah, go ahead. He brought those 2 bills, there's $2.35 there. And he paid me $2.35 for that carton of cigarettes. That was 59 or 60. And I've always kept them. The coins go back to 1876. And I'm not sure what year the bills are made. I think probably 1923. But that's the end of the big bills.
They're large.
Pardon?
They're large.
Yeah, well, that's what money used to be. It used to be that big. You used to have big wallets. Nowadays you got big wallets, nothing in them. Oh, God. Okay, this is when Carter and I worked for Roy Baker. Carter's not in the picture, but Roy Baker is here, Phil Baker, they were from Antrim. They did restoration work, and that's the beginning of the Longfellows Wayside Inn. And there's a lot of Antrim men in here. Here's Rick Davis's father right there. Herb Gray, Howard Ayers, Christy Ellenwood. Half the men were from Massachusetts because we had to join the union. When we went down to Massachusetts to work, they made us join the union, and they made Mr. Baker have a Massachusetts union man to every New Hampshire person that come down. So, but we were there for 2.5 years. It was the most fun. That's the final end of that. We went there. I told you before, it burned down New Year's Eve, 1955, and 2 years later, Ford Foundation got the money, gave the money to rebuild the building. And I was in Florida, and Phil Baker gave me a call and said, if you want your job back, come up. And so I was down in Florida at the beach, and January 2nd, I was back up, and it was the coldest winter you ever saw. I was back up in New Hampshire. There wasn't any buildings. We were outside all the time. Cold, God, it was cold. But no, we were there for 2.5 years. This goes back to when I bought the store. This is what it looked like. And if you look at the back here, the building goes way back a lot farther. And this was the inside. That's a cigarette thing I pointed out before. That's Betsy, and that's my oldest, Todd, and myself. And this was part of the